So I think my, see, just for the benefit of people who have joined, the conversation is usually, we have been doing these learning sessions on blockchain where we talk about, what we can do and how we can use the technology. But we wanted to do one session on its applicability and use cases that exist. And that's why I requested Amitesh to do that for us, because Amitesh has been working on the blockchain applications. And I think even before blockchain came into the market, they've been there in that, exploring blockchain to a large extent. Yeah. So I think I don't have any leading questions, but Amitesh, I would really want you to, talk about, as a start, what does blockchain intend to do for businesses?
No, that's a great point, Rati. But I think recently I was a part of a Smart India hackathon, which was organized by Ministry of Education. So what was super interesting, there was actually 75 nodal centers across India, and the hackathon was organized across India at the same time. And there were about 25,000 students who participated in that 36-hour hackathon, and a lot of solutions and business ideas and problems that were discussed. So one of the nodal center was BIT Mishra, where I was also an evaluator, and I did spend some very significant time there with the faculties, with the academic folks, with the students, and the people who have actually traveled from the other part of country. What was super interesting in my conversation with HOD of computer science, he did mention that, okay, blockchain is an upcoming thing. It's something which is super interesting. And then there is a very strong perception he had, or rather an opinion that he had, that for projects, people use this word. I mean, specifically in industry, just to sound cool, that you have a blockchain-based project, and typically industry is actually trying to use it. So, and I did ask him that, how does he arrive to that opinion or that conclusion that, I mean, as an industry, you just use the buzzword, you throw the word out there, and things start to move. So it is also a gap in terms of awareness, and specifically with academic institution, there's a massive amount of gap that exists. So more than, and of course, concept-wise, blockchain, I have always taken this stand that it's a pure play computer sciences problem. There's no net new innovation that we are doing there other than bringing all part at one place. So in fact, in the previous learning event sessions, we have all seen that how we are solving one computer science problem at a time. So somebody actually integrate the complete solution at one go. So from a computer science background, or people with that sort of education and learning, they find that, okay, there's nothing new or nothing absolute that exists. But we don't have to look blockchain as an hammer. We have to look blockchain as a facilitator or enabler into the process. So in one of the interesting conversation, he said that it's just a shared database. I mean, end of the day, a shared database linked list, and then there are concepts which are already, and he was trying to connect to what he actually know about the subjects academically based on his research as well, and apply it onto the real world scenario. Unfortunately, blockchain for industries is not that. And we all need to let go of that bias to begin with. I mean, we'll have to say, okay, I mean, it's not .NET, it's not Java, it's not your cloud technologies. So what we have to know and understand that it is actually little more than that. And why you need to understand blockchain has nothing to do with the technology landscape. It has to do with everything, why technology is needed at the first place to begin with. So and so the reason I took that as a reference, because, and which is where I believe as a learning event or as an opportunity that we're trying to offer, academic colleges need to step up so that we can create a capacity for people's understanding. Now, let's go one point deeper, that how does he come to that conclusion? I mean, of course, he has done his own bit of research. I mean, if you go to an internet, in fact, I'll share my screen and I'll just okay, let me, okay. I think, did I share the wrong screen by any chance?
You share the crypto screen.
Okay, sorry. So just let me know if it's Twitter is visible on the screen.
Yes.
Okay, so can you see the tweet from Binance?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So if you can look at, I mean, this is something which is a very, very interesting consolidation. And there is also, and this is also a point of information. So unfortunately, we are not connected to the right source of information, and we are connected to the individual's perception at most of the places. So if you look at, I mean, all the leading companies, be it Alphabet, BlackRock, Microsoft, Tencent, Citi, UBLG, I mean, all of them, one way or other, have started working in that direction. And these are some of the active. I mean, this is curated by blockdata.tech, and they are actually being able to comprehend it based on their insight. But I mean, this is just a tip of an iceberg, and in fact, not even a tip of an iceberg. So, I mean, for example, if you look at Samsung, I mean, they have 13 number of rounds already. I mean, that company called Flow Carbon, so which is very close to what we are trying to achieve in our goals with Flow Card, wherein it's trying to facilitate or bring sustainability into an equation and reward users appropriately and enable reducing carbon footprint and stuff like that. So all these innovative ideas which require a participation of a consumer, organization, supplier. So when you really need that kind of scenario where different stakeholders need to come together as a part of a solution, which is where industries and companies who have such scenarios are the first adopters into the process. I mean, few years ago, this was not the case. I mean, we were all contemplating and exploring what it was. So the point here is, I mean, as an academic, they could have also this as a point of an information, unfortunately not, and which is actually, so which is where we are propagating a wrong sort of ideas, but someone who's really focused have started to build their solutions onto it. Now, there could be different scenarios that you need to look at, but one of the things that we are clearly seeing as a trend, climate action coming into a mainstream massively. Of course, efficiency gain and productivity gain is something which every company is trying to focus on. At the same time, we are trying to also look at a trend where companies are trying to innovate new product and solutions. So the amount of time, and then again, these products are not primarily a technology product innovation. I mean, the product innovation is all about simplifying the journey, simplifying and onboarding users, translating much more value and benefit to an end user, and finding ways to sustain that effort. I mean, every time when we are trying to onboard a user, we put a significant amount of effort, and then we have entire metrics, be it financial metrics or a business metrics, all associated around it to ensure that how much of value we are trying to create out of the user. So that whole thing is getting onto the other side. The other interesting trend, and most of these companies are the companies of the future, wherein they have designed and defined the future in the past, and they're the ones who are also defining how future is going to look like. And they're the ones who are on the edge of leveraging and extending technologies to that level. And if blockchain, I mean, I'm not saying that Bitcoin blockchain or Ethereum or their own blockchain. I mean, when I say blockchain, I mean the gamut of everything as a scenario or as a technology. So if they have picked this as a scenario to define and redefine a future, I mean, there's something more to it, and which is where the business model, the underlying business model of all the large corporations are going through a shift. So we have gone through that era already where, I mean, so we always talked about digital transformation, and you're on the journey, you'll be transformed and do this and I mean, buy this product, adopt this product. But we are now already set. I mean, that journey of transformation is already done. We are pretty much have lived through that. We have understood that the core of any business model lies a technology. We have to expand technology into the real world scenarios. So all of this that we are seeing, I mean, I'll pass on the link of the tweet as well. It's a real good tweet to keep an access to. So let me copy the tweet. So this is one of the stuff that I just wanted to share and tell people that there is an additional sense of information which is available. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to rely on people or even what I'm saying. We need to get an access to right information. Now, for example, a couple of areas which we are seeing a massive maturity. One, we are seeing maturity on areas related to privacy. So blockchain comes naturally with the idea of saving privacy, establishing trust among people. I mean, something which unfortunately was used in the dark web era, and everybody knew that, okay, if you know so much of a deep tech, I mean, you are certainly associated with the dark web. And that's again a sort of a bias or a common conditioning that we had. But for enterprises to opening up to the ideas of taking privacy as the core, I mean, if you look at the dark web is all about anonymity, preventing your anonymity and ensuring that still the trade and the conversation and the exchange of information can happen. So now, ironically, we are talking in the new world about the same language, and we are saying that, okay, we'll be privacy first. We'll ensure that what's happening is always going to stay under the hood, and you control what information you want to share. So there's absolutely no difference in the values. Of course, the virtues are different, and it's just that now enterprises have are getting matured about the whole idea of how to go about it. I mean, if we look at a transformation, I mean, for Facebook to move to Meta, is I think one of the primary the reason is the ad revenue. I mean, so in the demographic data as a target audience, if we are all privacy first individual in the future, and if you are not a target audience, or let's say I'm not a target audience, or if Premjit is not a target audience, I mean, how would you be propagating a message, and how exactly you're going to solve that problem? So they need to solve that problem all over again into a new way, and which is where bootstrapping a Meta, bringing in the concept of metaverse and trying to create additional possibilities is where they are bringing with. Now, certain characteristics of blockchain, specifically the cryptography part of it, which allow a massive amount of security. Second, transparency element of it, which allow to prove certain thing available and existed in certain time. NFT is a classic example where brands like Nike and Adidas and other folks have started using it. Similarly, the services part, the gig economy part of it, where artists and creative people who really needed to make more money and they have no idea, and they had to rely on platforms like YouTube or Instagram to only make money. So there's an additional revenue that is coming up through that. So transparency and provenance have come up with its own set of benefit. And of course, exchange of value. And exchange of value is not always cryptocurrency. It's not always about buying Bitcoin or what you can buy from Bitcoin. It is also about, so for example, Riti, you design an amazing course and you want 100 people to fund it. And so that you can take care of your expenses, so that you can work on more courses because you're really good at it. So in the pre blockchain world, you might want to reach out to some business, some individual or investors, and raise that money to be able to support your expenses and build that course, or use a crowdsourcing platform to commit a cause and dedicate a whole lot of time in marketing yourself and uh, ensuring and finding that trust, and then raising that money and then starting to work on it. So all of this in the blockchain world is where you actually find token holders who actually become a part of you as an investor. So the whole process is democratized. I mean, you really don't need to raise millions always. You just, because when you raise million, you want to buy trust, or you want to show them the value on the product, and then you build something on top of it. So now the process of building has been disrupted. So you can co-build while you can raise money at the same time, and you can, and as you progress, things starts to work out in that way. And most of these large corporation, I mean, there's a reason why finance is a separate department, or investment is an important milestone. And if that can be actually democratized in a certain way, and you can involve and engage more individuals as a part of a building process, that's exactly where most of the businesses. So any forward-looking business, they are trying to achieve that zone, and transparency is a key, and blockchain allows you to facilitate and enable that. So I do hope that, I mean, I did had the similar line of conversation with the professor and the HOD of computer science. I don't know, unfortunately, whether he agrees or not, but that's all right. So, but I think we'll have to go beyond the technology conversations in the use cases, and it should go beyond the scope of CIOs now, and it has to be a part of conversation among the board of members and CEOs and chairman. There's a new role which most of these enterprises are talking about. It's called DPO, Data Protection Officer. So many countries have a legal position now wherein a compliance of data protection is critical and important as per the law within the boundaries they operate. So blockchain can again be a big facilitator in ensuring that those compliances are exist, and compliances and whole together can be done very, very differently and in a very minimal way, and with a very, very minimal in a very cost effective way over a period of time. So there are these avenues. I would like to talk about a few of the cases that we have done, unless until if there are more questions from people.
Yeah, we can take some questions, but I really like the fact, Amitesh, where you said that you brought out the more than the use cases, it's about where blockchain fits into the value chain of the business,
That
right?
is correct. That is correct.
More processes that are available in the businesses, how can we probably automate it, or not even automate it, but make it maybe
So
more secure, maybe.
yeah, so I'll give you an example, Riti. We're doing a pilot for Flowcard for a company in UAE, and so this company in UAE they offer solution to restaurants. So most of the restaurants in UAE, I mean, you need to source food. I mean, be it fish, chicken, vegetables, raw food, or whatever. So I mean, and you have a preferred way of procuring and stuff like that. So they're offering that solution that will offer a fresh vegetables in a very optimal price. And UAE itself is a net importer of most of the raw materials, specifically on the food item side of things. And of course, there are a number of suppliers. So as a restaurant, you have to manage that relationship. So one way is you manage your individual, you manage the procurement yourself, or you use this platform, which ensures that based on the quality, based on the quantity, based on the if you have multiple franchisees and you want certain place to be available, so this solve their procurement, sourcing, and supply issues straight away. So it's a one-stop platform which allows them. So and that's the simplicity of the interface that they're trying to sell to the restaurant owners or the kitchens or the cloud kitchens, and there are people paying them for that service. Now let's take one step backward. So now for these guys, how they do it? I mean, so they have, let's say, 300,000 SKUs with them, and they have so many items to be delivered and shipped. Now, and they need a best rate as well. So it's a mini stock exchange within the process itself. So let's say if it's a small material, let's say a mushroom, and if a mushroom is available of a certain quality, of a certain grade, and it can be priced differently due to number of conditions, and then you should be in position to supply and source it. So now these folks are actually extending blockchain to bring the entire supply chain logistics on there. So, and bringing a complete transparency for restaurant owners as well. So they log into the platform, they can choose suppliers, they can understand the price, they can look at the reviews, they can look at the reputation of the item, they can actually go through the actual feedback and facilitate and get the trade done. Now, if you want to build such a central system, I mean, it's a massive infrastructure to be built over a period of time, and it's a multi-million business even before it can be launched into the marketplace. I mean, that's the amount of fundraising that you need to do. But if you use blockchain as a model, so the whole concept of getting decentralized, where you start empowering individual supplier, you say that you already have your stocks, you just have to press this button, make yourself available, run this piece of node on at your computer, and then you're taken care of. You don't really have to do anything else. And same goes with every other suppliers. Now, for them to actually come together and facilitate a trade, there is no central system which is required, which is where so the architecture of blockchain allows all of them to facilitate. So even this company is an IT company, they don't have a servers and they don't need servers. And the whole idea is that everyone who's willing to participate in a business come to the infrastructure and participate into the process. So the point is, when you as a customer walk into a restaurant and you want to know that where this mushroom has been sourced and when, so that entire information and data is available to you, and you can, and that's the value that gets created into the process. So if you look at all stakeholders, the visitors or the customers of the restaurant owners, the procurement team within the restaurant, the platform provider, the suppliers, and the sourcing people within the suppliers, and the last person, the farmer, who's actually growing the crop. So if you look at the complete value chain goes to a rejig, and if it's just a small integration of an idea of blockchain comes into their supply chain, the whole process gets smoothened out. So we really don't have to understand where system is breaking. We just have to, and as a platform provider, their job is not to build the platform, but just to adopt the idea of decentralization and ensuring that if someone is trying to abuse the system, how to prevent it and create those prevention models. And I'm just taking this example because it's a classic example of how a farmer grows a food to the customer who actually walks into a restaurant, have the food, and they have the complete visibility. And earlier, these used to be use cases of future in Hyperledger, but now we see all of this in action happening on ground as of this day and age.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Hi.
Hi, Premji.
Hi. So interesting to see. I hope. So I have only two questions. I suppose you have a platform in place already, and it's also amazed to hear about the stories about the what do you say, the prototype which you have, the demo which you're doing, the client, etc., the POC. I think its hope is successful, but it's also actually kind of you gather a lot of information from the client. I think. I mean, so I'm just wondering. I mean, there are incidents where I think potentially, what are you doing so that you are foolproof, attack proof? Where, because the moment you are compromised, I think you are putting the entire stakeholders at stake. And if you look at the example which you gave from a restaurant, it actually goes up to the family, right, from the farmer itself. Yeah. So what are you doing? Or is it something, because I know some incidents which happened with blockchain platforms where they're compromised. So how good are you, or what are you doing about it? That's one. My second question is, you also did mention about the dark web. I think very interests me as well. So I understand, I mean, it's nowhere related to what we do. I mean, those are different animals altogether. They have a safe haven there, actually they trade to each other, etc., etc. There are incidents where I think your Aadhaar number can be fetched for $1, less than that. So that's a situation. That's a world which you live in.
Yep.
So what are we doing about it? And which I'm more keen about that. And also help me understand what is private and public blockchain. Yeah. So these are the two.
I'll start with the private and the public. So are you a Bollywood buff by any chance?
No way.
No way. And have you seen any Amitabh Bachchan movies ever?
Yeah.
Okay. So there used to be this Amitabh Bachchan movie called Dawn, and there was this guy and he was in a setup where he actually, so the original Dawn is dead with a police bullet, and then the duplicate walks in, and the only agenda that duplicate Dawn, who was actually planted by police, which was a lookalike of Amitabh Bachchan, was to find that Lal diary, and that had contact information of all the trades and all the people that they can call up and all the passwords that were available for trade to facilitate. So that Lal diary is the private blockchain. Okay, so that stays within you in that premise, and you have a total control of it. And of course, you want to pass it on as a legacy. You authorize. So, for example, in Facebook, I mean, if I die, my wife get an access to the entire content. I mean, I've passed on that as a contract with the Facebook, and that digitally is possible now. So that, I mean, in a very, very high level, that's exactly what private blockchain is. I mean, you set the rules, you define the rules, you are the owner of it. And of course, you bring people that you trust, and you handpick folks to bring those transactions, because you want that Lal diary to be away from everything. And you'd want to use it if there's a point of a conflict. So typically, private blockchain is used in scenarios where you want to leverage that as a conflict resolution based on the access of data. So you say that this is a privileged information. No, not everyone has an access to it. But if there is a rule to unlock and look at that information and then give an access to that information, you want to bring that sort of transparency, something similar to what moon landing fiasco was all about. So if you want to replicate that scenario in real world scenario, private blockchain is where is going to be leveraged in a real nice sense.
So you enforce zero trust policies there.
Yeah. And then you are the rule creator. I mean, you say that, you know what, I'm the boss and I'll always be the boss. I mean, you follow this or you don't follow this. So you are the one. And let's say if I need to trade with you and you're a rich man and I know that there's an opportunity, you set the rules, say, Amitesh, you need to follow these rules, be a part of this, and then only we'll trade. And that's all right. So, and then we all agree to that part. And again, the details of transaction and what has happened, how funds have moved or how commodities or values have moved and exchanged, everything resides there within that scope and boundary. Public blockchain, on the other hand, is little beyond than that. So in fact, I'll quickly show you because we are working exclusively on that, and then it will make more sense. Just give me a moment, please. Rithi, let me know if my screen is visible.
Yeah, it's visible.
So in a public blockchain world, every transaction is actually put onto a ledger, and that information is available in a public domain. And every time the transaction or transaction details are available onto the public space for anyone to access to. So in a pub, and that's where we think the future exists as well. I mean, when you're trying to establish the idea of transparency and trying to establish how transparency is going to scale and work into the future. Just give me a moment. I will look into the. Okay, so the idea here is I'll quickly through. So this is a flow card which we are trying to work on, and there's a solution which is still work in progress. It's in a beta stage right now, which allows you to do a exchange of contacts at this point in time. So just give me a moment. It takes some time to load for the first time. So this is my wallet and this is my public ID. So in the blockchain world, I mean, I'm not known as Amitesh. I'm known by this ID, and of course, this information is private to me, and unless until I want to go to the blockchain world and disclose that this ID belongs to Amitesh Anand, or somebody else hacks my system and publish this information there, it's only when it is revealed. The KYC process within the government where they are trying to enforce KYC is exactly this. So when you go to the blockchain with this ID, you map this ID to a person, and of course that information is tagged with the government. And this is all the transactions which are happening in the blockchain scenario. So, and this is just another tool which is built on top of a decentralized setup, which allow us to give us an access and understanding. So, for example, this is a transaction. This is not even a block. This transaction is part of some block, and this is the transaction reference ID. This is the size of the transaction, the date, the timestamp, which block this is included in. So if you go to this block has number of transactions, or possibly more transaction. And then here are the details of the transaction. So this was, it's like your bank accounts setup. So let's say if I pass on 2 rupee and do a 2 rupee to a UPI to your account, but that idea was not to give you 2 rupee, but idea was to send you a password. So I can actually do a transaction of 2 rupee to you and put a password in the comment and send to you. So that comment password itself is more, and then we can actually use that as a model to have a secure transaction as well, because now we are talking within the banking infrastructure to do it. So it's something similar, which is available for the public here, and which is where we have leveraged something called as flow data, which is bytes of data, which is available. So what we do is we facilitate a transaction between two IDs, and then we pass on the encrypted information among people. And then this is a data layer protocol that we have designed. So based on the kind of transaction, nature of transaction, behavior of transaction, these has been optimized. And as long as you're authorized to understand, of course, you have to be a system or a machine or an authenticated user to have the appropriate rights to understand what's been exchanged in the process. So once you're part of a flow card system, you get it. So this is how a typical public blockchain would look like. So for example, this block, it has got only 2 transactions. So this is newly generated coin with no information. And here the okay. So this is where the private and the public bit comes into picture. Second, I think the point that you made about the data security, and I'm with you. See, there are a lot of hacks which has happened, but we need to now understand why these hacks have happened and what led to these hacks and how that can be prevented. So in the blockchain world, everything is a private public key pair, and everything that you have is your private key. I mean, I really don't need a password. I mean, in the demo now, what you saw that I went to the LinkedIn, clicked on sign in as a LinkedIn, I had to enter my password. I mean, that can actually, we can let go that whole process. You just click a button, say create flow card, and it can get created simultaneously because it generates a pair of private public key. Private key stays with me and public key stays with the blockchain world for people to look at. Now, unfortunately, in the browser, when you're doing that an action, so your browser, your cookies also understand that you did that action of creating private public key, and private key gets stored within the browser context itself. So when hackers get an access to your computer, they also get an access to your private keys. And then they actually use this private key and go to the blockchain and do all the funny business. So most of the exchanges, to simplify the process for their end user, because I cannot expect my dad, or neither we can expect within the team as well, to remember this 34, 35 character hex keys with capital and minimal combination. So what we do is we save the password and we say that, okay, exchange will take care of it. And so they became a custodian of the process. And that's where the process of hack starts to begin. And that's why it is not very safe and secure. So way to counter that is not to simplify the blockchain world, but to create an adoption and give a control back to the user. So for example, in case of farmer will not understand technology. They'll not understand this idea of private public blockchain. I mean, if we are talking in an Indian context, for example, I mean, if they have an Aadhaar card, that's all they know, that I have my identity, use this, or they want someone else to do that in behalf. So you'll have to build the security scenario specific to the amount of education and awareness, de-risk the process, and bring some element of human control. So what has happened so far, it's specifically because in the trading scenarios, most of the things are automated. And in fact, one of the reasons Ethereum got popular because of the smart contract and the ways they can actually, you can create, or machines can create smart contract, deploy it and execute it automatically, has led it to its growth massively. But that also comes with a problem. And that problem is this: if it is hacked, the computers and hackers also run the same program and they get the money out of it. So
I get that, but the same thing. I mean, what my interest was basically, what are you as a platform enabler? So what are you guys doing to ensure saying that there is an amount of security layers created? And another point is when you mentioned about pharma, I think if you look at last 2 years, pharma was a very sensitive sector. I think there are about 151 Asia pharma companies have been compromised, right?
Okay.
The amount you all know, I mean, what is the amount which is gone up? So I'm more curious about what are you people doing about it, right?
Excellent. So what we are doing right now, Prenjit, we are actually first building the first layer of solution, as in, so the entire world, most of the world, entire world is a bad statement to be made. Most of the people in the blockchain world, they're trying, or they have tried to build wallets so far. And the idea was to build a wallet and then we'll associate a use case, a very Paytm model. I mean, allow the transfer of money and then we can sell tickets, buy tickets, buy stuff and stuff like that, or build an e-commerce portal. So we don't qualify Paytm as a e-commerce portal, but in a nutshell, they do more than the e-commerce if you go to their app. So that's the sort of a subtle business model that blockchain world also followed. So we changed.
According to me, is the most prone for attacks, because I've done few stuff where I think I could actually find out the balance available in the valley, right? With few of the startup ecosystem for supplying vegetables, meat, etc. We have details. So I mean, so Valley, is it a great interesting proposition for, especially for, because with you guys, I think we won't be doing with hundreds, right? There are a lot of money which is parked there. So
Correct. So and that's the first thing we are doing. So we are not going with the wallet approach at all to begin with. Wallet is of course needed, and which is why we have seeded a wallet just as a part of a process and focusing on the actual use case. The idea here, Premjit, is a simple philosophy that we have. I mean, if money is precious, is what people will try to look at. And which is why wallets are hacked, because you rightly said a moment ago that if you have money in the wallet, that's what people are behind it. But what if you don't have money in the wallet, but you have a lot of value, which is associated, which can be converted? And NFTs are a classic example. I mean, you might be holding a bond towards an NFT. You may have 0 rupees in your wallet, but you may have a $500,000 worth of NFT associated onto your wallet. So that is much more valuable than the actual money that you have. And that's where we are trying to unlock. We're trying to unlock that value proposition within the use cases itself. And that's the first philosophy that we're trying to build. Money is okay. Second, and that was one of the classic reasons we picked up Flow blockchain. So if you give me $1, I can give you 100 Flow right away, actually. And I'll still be making a lot of it, and it's a great deal for me overall. So which means that the coin is easily available, the demand is there, but it's not the coin demand that exists, and it's a Satoshi coin because that's where we wanted to stick to. So that's one of the approaches that we had to validate, get the greed out of the equation, of the financial greed out of the equation, and start focusing on that. Second, of course, it's a custodian based approach right now. We are on a beta 1000 journey where we are trying to establish the use case, find more value on the use case, and then start in creating the data security layer in a form of an app. So what happens when as long as you're on the web, you are hackable and every data. In fact, I'm not saying that our platform is not hackable. In fact, it is. And that's an interesting exercise that we keep doing internally to start preventing our system over a period of time. So the app will allow you to go off the grid and still be able to participate in the use case. And when you go off the grid, you of course have to shelter yourself nicely. And then there is going to be a simplification process, because getting off the grid is one part, but the moment you get on the grid back to exchange and to update that information, you need to prevent yourself further. So we have built those layers of information security and data security already. And as a part of an app, we are going to bring, and then we are giving choices to our users. So people like farmers who want to trust us, we sign a disclaimer. Okay, we are not saying that we will not be hackable, but our intent is not to be hacked. There is a risk, but if you're off the grid, you have absolutely no risk, and you choose what choices you want to go with. If you're a matured user, you'd want to get onto that. So the app will allow us to get off the grid into the process and still stay safe into the scenario. However, our approach to blockchain, Premjit, is not decentralized. I mean, firmly, we don't believe in a total decentralized world. It is actually not possible. So we have a hybrid approach to it. Anything which is less risky will be centralized. Anything which is super risky will be decentralized. Anything which is critical decision for business to exist will go into a central process. Onto the central process. And anything which is less critical, I mean, for example, what color of clothes should I wear to office today is a very low critical decision making process. So that can easily be decentralized. So we are going with a low hanging fruit approach. Anything which is less critical, less risky goes on to the decentralized automated approach. Anything which impacts business directly or indirectly in X amount of time, that stays centralized, and stay focused on the central processes and see what can be done to start getting them decentralized. And that's the hybrid approach that we have overall for our implementation.
And I hope all these platforms what you have, right? You and your friends, whatever we see across, I hope they all undergo very stringent security compliances protocols and certifications and standards. So have you also undergone such stress testing?
Oh, so since you're recording and I don't have a habit to lie, I'll say the truth. No, we have not. And we are in the process of going through that exercise. And I mean, that's the.
I mean, so India is, again, as you find, I think we undergo certain compliance parameters. But I think at the moment, if you are open to global markets, right, where we have your US clients and European clients, so there are very, very clear about the security standards to be complied by and abide by. So.
No, because what's interesting, because last week only, and there's a reason why we haven't done that, because one of the things that we are also trying to do is to leverage an opportunity in exact same way you mentioned. So we are trying to launch a bug bounty program and disrupt the program itself. So most of the companies, they have no idea how to go about it. And of course, it's a very risky business to be in. I mean, if you announce a bug bounty program and somebody actually hacks you and then you're taken for a ride. And
bounty is actually fun. I mean, the novice will try that, but I'm thinking about much more standards, right? Because you're actually doing very serious business assets, right?
No, I'm with you on that, and it's not just India, Premjit. I think I work with oil and gas companies. I have a business in the UK and the US along with UAE, and I can tell you that I mean, at least in India, we don't give value to hackers much, which is why hackers can't extract much from us. But in the UK or in the UK specifically, I think they are. I mean, their anxiety levels are high. In India, our anxiety levels are still in a super managed world, and I mean, even I'm pretty sure if they come and hack our platform, and that's the actual conversation that happened within the team. That okay, you know what happens? Let's say in a scenario if hacker hack the world, hack our platform today. So the common answer we had, tomorrow we'll launch a new one, and then that's all right. We'll say, okay, tata, bye-bye. Because the beauty of, we have no centralized solution. I mean, no central database exists. All the data is already in blockchain. It's just that we have to provision another server and start make it work. And that's also a sort of a foolproof way of ensuring that if you come and visit my Flowcard app website and you hack it, so be it. It's yours. You can keep it.
In that exercise, just to centralize that, but in that exercise, the the losers are actually not the organization, the company as such, but I think the data, right? Forget about the money which goes out of the client, but the data which entrusted to all the clients is something which need to be there.
Correct. So no, that's a good point made, Premjit. So in the platforms and the tools that we have done, be it for healthcare or even for Flowcard, the data is always with the individual. It's secured in their infrastructure. Excuse me, and nobody can take their data, including, I mean, so, and that's the beauty of blockchain, because it's there, exists in eternity. Yes, there is one scenario. Let's say if I give away my private key to you, and you can actually download and access the data, but that private key is also with me as well. And there is absolutely no way you can delete the data, because that's there in the eternity. And once you have said that it's a compromised data, or you raise a flag, we have smart contracts in place which can actually ensure, with your authority and authorization, to actually re-secure the data all over the place. So of course you lose data, or someone will make a copy of it. There's absolutely no way. I mean, if I go ahead and say this is my user ID and this is my password, I'm pretty sure anyone can actually log in. But as long as I'm not, and even if I have done that, I can still go back to my account and re-secure it and reuse the same account. That's the one of the beauties that we are offering within the solution landscape that we are building. And I was with the Bureau of Police in Delhi and talking to them about blockchain, and specifically on blockchain forensics, because there's a lot of crime which gets registered, leveraging, which uses and leverages blockchain. And of course, the access and understanding of technology is limited even with the police department. So they need some help. So they organized a program of leadership development, creating awareness and sensitization to their cyber teams across India. So it was a very interesting series of conversation and lecture that I had specifically on blockchain forensic, and it was really good and insightful experience afterwards. So I mean, of course, I'm available to them for anything that I could be of help. I mean, there's no degree or certificate that is needed, but happy to be of any help. Awesome. Cool. All right. I think we took a little more time, but I think it was a good conversation. Any other questions, thoughts, Riti or the rest of the team?